Lecture 1, Inventory Control with Known Demand, Part 2. So following the previous part, let's see what are the relevant costs in any inventory control problem. We do have three types of costs in any inventory control problem. The first one is holding cost, or it's also called as inventory cost. And then we do have ordering cost and penalty cost. Penalty cost is in the case of shortage. When we do have shortage for lost sale or back order sale, we will consider some penalty cost for this situation. Okay, so let's see how we can determine the inventory holding cost. So the first part of this holding cost, is the cost of providing a physical space. So we need to assign a physical space to store the goods, right? So that has cost like renting costs, right? The second part could be insurance. We need to have insurance for the goods in the warehouse, and the third part could be the cost of risks for breakage, spoilage, deterioration, and obsolescence. Okay, and the last part is the opportunity cost here. Uh, Opportunity cost of alternative investment. So, or it's also called cost of capital. So when we have inventory, this means that we are uh, maintaining our budget in the inventory. So instead of that, we could invest this budget in somewhere else to make interest, to make money, right? So for the period of time that we do have that budget in our inventory, it will have an opportunity cost. Usually we consider this as interest rate. Yeah, I mean, at least we could put that budget in the bank account in order to receive interest, right? So the opportunity cost is more common in and important in all inventory models. And in this case, actually, we are assuming that inventory as a cash, right? And so if it decrease the inventory level, I mean, if we optimize the inventory level to have less inventories in our warehouse, then we will have more capital on our hand to invest somewhere else. Okay, so so these are the four parts of the inventory holding cost. So by having those four components, we can define the inventory holding cost. For example, here you have an example. Let's say the cost of capital is 28%. So this is the interest rate in the market for the cash. And then let's say the 2% is the taxes and insurance cost in inventory. 6% is for cost of storage, and 1% for breakage and spoilage. So in total, we will have 37% as total interest charge. So yeah, usually we infer the holding cost as an aggregate interest rate by having those four components. Okay, and so if you multiply this rate, here we do have 37%. If you multiply this 37% by the unit cost of the good, then that will be the holding cost per unit per year. So yeah, the holding cost is expressed as dollar per unit, I mean unit item per year. Usually it's per year, but if you do have a different time period, we should define that. But in general, usually we assume a year as our default period of time. Okay. So here we show the inventory holding cost with the H. So H equals I times C. So I here is the aggregate interest rate by having those four components. So it's a percentage. So if you multiply this aggregated interest rate by the unit cost, which is C here, then we'll have the H as the unit inventory holding cost per time unit. So, or for example, per unit per year. Okay. In the previous slide, we saw that how we can estimate the unit holding cost. I mean, the holding cost per unit per year or time unit. Okay. Now, let's see how we can calculate the total holding cost for an inventory. Okay. So let's say the inventory level is this curve over the time. So we want to calculate the total holding cost over the time period of T1 to T2. Okay, so in order that we need to multiply the inventory holding cost, I mean the unit holding cost by the area under the inventory level. Okay, so integral from T1 to T2 IT dt. Okay, so we can convert this formula to this equivalent formula by having the average inventory level. So I bar. So if we divide that integral by the time period, which is T2 minus T1, then we will obtain the average inventory level. Okay, and then now we can multiply the unit inventory holding cost by the average inventory level and the time period, which is T2 minus T1. So let's have an example here. Let's say we do have a product and let's say we order 100 items. I mean, our order size is 100. And then it takes 6 months. So let's say here T is based on a year. So 6 months will be 0.5, right? Half of a year. And we'll sell these 100 items over the 6 months. So the inventory level will be decreased, let's say continuously, linearly over 6 months. Then at time 0.5, the inventory level becomes 0. Then we will order another, we will place another order. So then we will have, let's say, 100 items at our inventory level at that time. And again, we continue selling this item by that demand rate, and it will go to 0 at the end of the year as well, and so on. Okay, so let's say this is our inventory level. So here, if we obtain the average inventory level, that will be this, right? As you see here, it will be 100 divided by 2, or 50, right? It's the average inventory level. Okay. Now, if we land, and let's say H equals $2. Okay. I mean, the unit holding cost is $2 per unit per year. Okay. Now, if we want to calculate the total inventory cost over 6 months, right here, so it will be 2 times the average inventory level, which is 50 here, and times the time period, which will be 0.5, right, for 6 months, right? Or for a year, it will be H2 times average inventory level 50, and time period for a year will be 1, right? So that's for a year. Okay, so this is how we calculate the total inventory holding cost over a time period. Okay. Now let's see how we can obtain the ordering or production cost. So the ordering or production cost will include 2 components. The first component is fixed cost of ordering. For placing an order for an external vendor, it will be fixed cost of ordering, but for the production, it will be setup cost. Okay, so I think you know that what the setup cost is. You want to change the setup of a production line to produce a different good. So it will take time, labor, and so on. So it will have cost, right? So we consider that as setup cost. For placing an order, again, we need to to spend time by an expert to obtain the vendors, and then to obtain the order quantity, and then do the paperwork, or let's say the system work to place an order. So again, it takes time and labor and so on. So we call that as a fixed cost of ordering. Okay. And then for each unit of order, we will have a cost of C. So C is the variable part, or the unit cost of the good. And then if we multiply this unit cost by the X here is the quantity, I mean the order size, the production quantity, then it will be the total variable cost. So yeah, here, so at in total, K plus C times X will be our ordering cost or production cost. Okay. And the last cost component in inventory models is penalty or shortage cost. So here we will consider all the costs when we do have shortage in our inventory as the penalty or shortage cost. It will be loss of revenue for lost demand, or if we have back ordered, I mean, we will satisfy those demands with a delay, then here we'll have a delay cost. Okay, delay cost for satisfying demands with a delay. And also loss of goodwill for being unable to satisfy demand when it occurs. Okay, so usually we define the shortage or penalty cost as per unit basis, and in some models we assume that whenever we have shortage, it doesn't matter how long we are in the shortage, but the cost is just per unit. It's not dependent to the period of time that we are in shortage. But in some models, we consider the shortage cost or penalty cost as cost per unit time. So in these models, we will consider the lag, I mean the time period that we are in shortage, and it will affect the penalty cost. Okay, so we'll see these costs in the models that we have later in our course. Okay, thank you.